how to choose a bird cage for your parrot. Today we're going to talk about 3 things to look at when choosing a bird cage for your parrot. Number 1, look at your parrot. I know, you would have never guessed, right? Number 2, look at the material of the cage. And you may think that's really obvious, that it's always the same materials, but some cages are not necessarily the proper material for, number 1, your kind of parrot. So looking at the material is still something we want to do. And number 3, believe it or not, we want to look at the purpose of the cage. The purpose, isn't that so obvious? Maybe, maybe not. Different cages can serve different purposes. Hey guys, I'm Kaylin, the author of the Parrot Bliss Bond, a couple other awesome parrot books, not to mention I'm working on the perfect apartment parrot, 30 species for you to choose from. And that's going to be out hopefully within the next couple of weeks. That there is my umbrella that my fella brought home. I can't help it. It all rhymes. And her name is Orabella. So it rhymes. I love Orabella. She's awesome. Orabella was a rescue and we don't know how old she was. We were told that she was about 6, but relative to cages, I don't know her age, and it is something that I would like to know. So someone had asked how to choose the cage, and they wanted me to talk about cages. So number 1, look at your bird. I don't know how old Orabella is. She's a little less active than I would have expected. As a matter of fact, I looked at getting a fella for her, another umbrella, but he was really active. I just didn't think I could quite do it. He was supposed to be about the same age as her, but they are different genders. So I'm like, does that account for the activity difference? The level is so different. Or is she older than we were told? So I don't really know. And that means that in this case, I don't know exactly what to make of Orabella's activity level, because you can see it right now. Now, Ale, my white cat Pioneus, is also back here with us. I was hoping he would come and be a YouTube star and be in the video, but I guess he decided that he was being camera shy. He flew to the window. Now he flew a little closer back to me. Hopefully he'll join us. And then you will see that his activity is different. It's higher. Now, often cages are made out of wrought iron, and then they are powder coated with paint. And the powder coating means that they put the paint on and then they bake it on, so it kind of makes like a hard shell kind of thing. They don't last forever, and I have learned that if you use a power washer, they last less time. I use power washer to clean my cages to make sure that they get clean, but it does wear on the paint, and it has been wearing out some paint on some of my cages. You can also go the royal route and get yourself a king's cage and pay like 3 times or more, but then you're going to get yourself a either aluminum cage, which is really nice because they don't rust and they're light, or maybe I think their other material is stainless steel, so that again they don't rust. Really good way to go. That's a cage that's going to last eons, because those are metals that aren't going to rust and they're really going to do super well. Do I think they're worth it? Yes. If you have the money to do 3 times the cost or whatever it is, you know, I mean, they really are quite a bit more. So that makes it a little challenging. So the material in the cage is super important, because some cages are made out of that wrought iron. Some cages are royalty cages, and you almost don't have to worry, but you do have to worry about the bar spacing, and that's a different topic. And some cages are going to be just wire that this girl would yawn and break, and then I'd have like metal sticking out, rusting, and potentially if she walked by, she'd cut herself. If it was under her feather, I wouldn't see it. It would be a disaster. Why do they make cages like that? Because they're super lightweight. And for something like a small parrot, a budgie, a parrotlet, they're perfect. Those beaks aren't going to crack anything major open, because, you know, they can't necessarily get that little beak around like a big nut, let alone are they going to be able to kill that cage. They might be able to open the doors on the cage. That's a different topic, but they aren't going to be able to kill that cage. So there are different materials made for different kinds of birds. Now, perhaps you've also seen those really beautiful, they almost look like bamboo, or I don't know, like these beautiful wooden cages. I love those cages. They're beautiful. My birds think they're toys. My birds are right, because to my birds, they are toys. They're little tiny, fragile, sweet pieces of wood that they're like termites, or beavers, and they just go through it. Those are made for finches or those smaller birds that don't have hook bills and that aren't going to eat my birds' cages. So those don't apply to us. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind about like a bamboo cage or a wood cage is also that when poop hits the wood on that, you can wash that, but the wood is absorbent, and so then what happens is now there could be bacteria in your cage. So then you have to like super clean, and it's a little harder because, you know, we're kind of dealing with a material that absorbs, which is one of the reasons for citizens or parrots, cages tend to be made out of metal, even if they have a powder coat. So let's look at your bird. When you look at your bird, there are different things you want to look at. For example, my African gray Hera, she's older. We also rescued her, and she's just older. She's not very active. She's going blind. When we offer her like a nut, she has to kind of like find it. She doesn't see it real well. She kind of obviously sees movement, because like if you rush her, she will, you know, get defensive, but she doesn't see well. Do I want her to have a massive cage that she like can get lost in and get hurt in? No. So you really want to look at your parrot's age. That's why Bella's age would really be significant. It would be a clue for me. You want to look at your parrot's level of activity. Some parrots are more energetic, and we can easily say that generally speaking, a budgie that can outmaneuver a hawk, the budgie is far more energetic and far more active than, for example, what a good example. She's sitting there and she's like not going anywhere. How come you're not going anywhere? Now, part of that might be because she was clipped and she came to us that way. Hi, sweetie pie. Oh, she says, I've been asking for attention. I'm like, I know, I'm making a video. But you could see that she's just not as active. Some of my other birds would be like walking back and forth on there or climbing down. They would be more active. So your parrot's energy level makes a difference, because obviously Hera doesn't need as big of a cage. As a matter of fact, a cage that isn't too big and that she can comfortably get around is really perfect for her, because she's going blind and she's really slowing down. Whereas my parrotlets, they're more active, and so it does well to give them more space. Another really big thing to consider is how many parrots are in your cage. If it's just one, you don't need as much space relative to the fact that if you have two, you want more space so that they have room to get around. Now, generally speaking, what I like to say, what my mentor taught me, and I agree with, is that a cage should be double the parrot's wingspan in one direction, triple in the other direction, and triple in height. Now, that may not sound really big, but one thing about a parrot's wingspan is they are sometimes, often, or maybe every time, actually wider than the parrot is from head to tail. Huge wings. They have really big wings. We don't see it because when they're all tucked in, what wingspan? She's got no wingspan, right? So it's really easy to kind of like lose sight of that wingspan. But when you see like the free-flying parrots, those big, beautiful wings with all the colored feathers, they're huge and they're wide. So the idea is you really want your parrot to have that room to stretch their wings and move around. And that's why we want double and triple the space. However, with a lot of parrots, that would make for some really, really big cages. Now, my biggest cage, if you take the bottom rail out, I could stand in it, but it's still not really enough room for my macaw. My macaw is big. She's over 1,000 grams, which is over, what is that? Oh my, is that 1 or 2 kilos? Anyway, 2 pounds, 1 kilo? Yes, 1,000 grams would be 1 kilo. So she's pretty big, and so it's kind of hard to give her a big enough cage. But she spends a lot of time out of her cage. So the purpose of the cage that was number 3 on looking at our cage, has a big impact, right? The purpose of my cage for my macaw is kind of like to house her if she's sleeping, or like if I'm not home and I need her to be in her cage kind of thing. That's usually not true. Now, one problem is they do make double size macaw cages, and then that would give her more room. Like, I would feel more comfortable with that, but it would literally take up half of our room, half the room that she's in. She already kind of takes up half the room because there's like a perimeter around her cage of places where she can reach and she'll bite and destroy more things, or where her shells go, or when she's hanging out on her cage. You know, there's just this perimeter around her cage. So I am now going in reverse order. She is the biggest cage, and Rosie's cage is 30 inches by 40 inches by 60. So we're talking more than 2 feet deep, more than 5 feet high when she's in it and that bottom rail's in. Like I said, I could step in it and then it's like more than 6 feet. And it's at 40 inches, 12, 24, 36. It's 48. It's almost 4 feet wide. I think it is 4 feet wide. I don't know if I measured that right or not. It's a really significant cage. Like, this chair that I'm on could fit in her cage. It's significant, but like I said, it's still not the biggest. So when I look at the cage, it's wrought iron. Rosie's energy level isn't super active because she's not a little bird like my parrot lets. Number 2, the material of the cage, like I said, it is that wrought iron. It works as long as it's not getting rusty, and you know, I don't want to get her exposed to metals and toxic metal poisoning. That would not be good. And number 3, like I said, the purpose of her cage is really only a place to be if we're out of the house and we work from home, so we're home a lot, or at night. So those are those are the 3 things you want to look at for the cage itself, and those are the things that you want to look at for your parrot's energy level. So now I'll go in order. Number 1, one of my favorite cage sizes is Alice's cage size. And again, come here, Ale, come here, let them see you. Alice's cage is 24 inches or 2 feet by 22 inches, although it really looks square. But so it's kind of like a square, and then it is 32 inches high. And I'm not measuring how high it is off the floor. I am giving you the measurements for the space the bird has, because I don't care how high it is off the floor. For me, right, you don't want your parrot's cage too low because they like to be up high. They're more safe and secure. They are more arboreal overall. That's where they tend to live, is in arboles or trees. That's probably Latin because I hear the Spanish in there. So that gives Ale 32 inches, which is 12, 24, almost 3 feet high. So there's that cage. I really like that cage. That cage works for any parrot that is Alice's size or smaller. Honestly, she has a night cage like that because her level of activity isn't very large. You want to come? And because all day long she's out. Her cage is a night cage, and she's like, you know, do I really need to sleep in there? And I'm like, you know, you do. So it's just a night cage. So I'm not uncomfortable with her being in that cage, even though it's not really big enough for her. But my bed doesn't give me room to like stretch out too much and do my yoga, but it doesn't matter because I don't do my yoga there, right? I get out of bed and I'm out all day. So she doesn't do her yoga in her cage either. She comes out for it. Do you want to come step up? Hey, sweetie, come here. You want to come say hello? There you go. She's not a really big, I want to step up on you kind of bird. Okay. She's like, I want to touch you, but I don't want to step on you. See how she doesn't want to come? She's like, I just want you to pet me. All right. My second cage, which Hera is in, and I have thought about putting Hera in a smaller cage, like Ale's cage. Okay, so here is my gorgeous white-capped Pioneers, who I love. Hi, Ale. Ale is short for Aviary, which is like a mystical character in Oaxaca that they have and do, and it's this whole cool thing in Mexico. Hera's cage, I could really put her in Ale's cage because, like I said, she's going blind and she doesn't have a lot of activity. But I have modified her cage. There's this flat metal area that I can easily wash, so that if she wants to be on a flat surface that isn't the bottom of the cage, it's elevated, she has that option. So right now I'm like, you know what, this is working, I'm leaving her in it. But Hera's cage is 23 deep. It is 31 inches wide and 31 inches tall. So she has a pretty good amount of space. I don't mind that cage, that's pretty good. It's not my ideal cage for a parrot that size. Or for example, I have my golden conure and my yellow orange winged Amazon Tico in a cage that size. So the two of them share a cage because they are super bonded. Tico's madly in love with my golden conure. If you take my golden conure away, Tico starts to scream, which Amazons are very good at. But so that cage works because pretty much I think Tico would defend my golden Beatrix with his life. So I don't have to really worry about them fighting. Beatrix is young and kind of active. I have to a little more so worry about Tico having the room to get away when Beatrix is being like this young male active, just like he's sowing his oats, I guess. I don't know. He's just going crazy. But that cage works. So that's a really nice size. That's one of the biggest cages before we kind of get monstrously big. And so it's a significant size cage at 31 inches wide, which is, and sorry guys, I don't know my meter, so I can give it to you in meters and all that. But it's almost 3 feet wide. So that's a nice size and it, nice depth. So it gives them some room. I like that. With most parrots, you can give them like a cage that's 10 feet tall and not very wide, and they're not going to take advantage of it. On the other hand, you could give them a cage that's 10 feet wide and not very deep this way, and if it's 10 feet wide, they're going to be happy because they have a lot of room to go back and forth or to fly, especially like if they really can open their wings. So for example, breeders and really good breeders, they will give their parrots really long cages. And again, it's wide enough that they can fly. It's usually at least 3 feet and usually at least 3 feet high, but they like to go as long as they can. Like my mantra likes to go 12, 16 feet so that the bird really has room to fly. So when my parrot has, 23 inches one way and 31 inches the other way, that's pretty good. Is it as big as I would like for it to be? No. But, again, your cage can, it's like at some point you don't even need a cage. You just like really make the room bird proof and your parrot could just live in the room kind of thing. So like sometimes you kind of do run out of room. So we have that balance, right? Between like our parrot's cage and our living space. Next, this cage is a cage I have my parrotlets in. It is it's 22 this way, 32 wide, and 3 feet high. So I consider this a small to medium sized aviary. And you could see in the picture that I have like, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 8, 10, something like that parrotlets in there. I have like 5 pairs. And so that much space, it's like my Amazon and my golden are in a cage about that size. But I have 10 parrotlets who live harmoniously in there. I have several feeding stations. So that size cage for my parrotlets gives them room to kind of be like, you know what, right now this is my perch. Right now that's your perch. And it also gives them room to go get food here, to go get food there, to go get water there, to get pellets here, to get seeds there, because little parrotlets, I do like to give them some parakeet seeds as a pretty regular part of their diet, but I also give them pellets. But so I have multiple feeding stations. So in this case, it is an aviary, which is a cage that they more so live in. I can't let them out because birds like her that are bigger, even maybe Ale, may not be very happy and be very nice to them. So it's important to really assess like how much time are they spending in there. And although my parrotlets can't fly for a good distance, they can fly from one side to the other, and they definitely do. They open their wings, which means that they do get some exercise. So I could be happier with a bigger cage, but that's pretty darn good. Next is a cage that I have a couple conures in. I like Purina conures, that's what I have. I've never gotten into other conures. And so my period conures, they're smaller conures, they're quieter conures, and they're more active because they're smaller. Their cage is 3 feet wide, that's significant, right? By 25 inches deep and 2 feet high. It's a pretty good size. Oh, and my Quakers, I have my Quakers in the same kind of cage too. So that really gives them room to move around, fly around. They have room for a couple different feeding stations for their water. They have room for what I call a bat box. A bat box is not a nest box because that can make them hormonal, and that could make my conures fight. One way I have 6 conures together and they get along, 6 green cheeks, or a mix of that size of conures, is that they have the room to move around and they have a bat box. The bat box is a box that they go into this way. There's no bottom, so there's no place to lay an egg. Like if they perch and they lay an egg, it would fall to the bottom of the cage or fall down through the rails to the very bottom of the cage. So that way they're not hormonal. It's more like a small aviary for them. So it's a significant size cage. I really do like for my parrots to have like the biggest cage they can. Next, I've got a very quick picture of where I've got my another parrotlet cage. I also have my Australians in the same size cage. And this cage is 32 by 22 by 33. I've just seen the time. I want to go along. So again, this is a pretty big size. It is pretty much just a little bigger than the parrotlet small aviary I was talking about. The difference is that this one, I can actually take the divider out and double the size, so then they can really fly, because then they're going to have like 6 feet all the way across. So that's really nice. It gives them some real space to move around. Now, when we talk about the monster cages like Rosie's cage, which like I said, I can stand in if you take out the bottom rail, I have another pre-monster cage. It's a little smaller. And I've got my second largest parrot, which is my Mealy Amazon, and he's 600 grams, so he's pretty big, Henry. He's in a cage that's 3 feet by 28 inches by 4 feet high. So 3 feet wide, 28 inches deep, and then 4 feet high. It's pretty significant. If you took the bottom rail out, I could get in and like I'd have to crouch because I'm taller than that. But don't forget, the 4 feet is their actual space, right? So the 4 feet starts at above ground level and then goes up. So it's a pretty significant size cage. It takes up a pretty good amount of space, but I like it because I do have 2 Amazons in there, Ursulus and Henry, and they are best buds. They don't have any problems. And while, again, it doesn't really give them room to really fly around and really like go crazy, I do bring them out back here and I give them time out back here to catch some fresh air, catch some sunshine, and really stretch their wings kind of thing. So, and do some flying. So, again, a real quick recap, you really want to consider your parrot. For example, my parrot Maximilian, he's handicapped. A really big cage would be a problem. I need him to have modifications to his cage. I need him to have room to move around, but enough that he can maintain his balance, and I don't want him falling. Like, if he falls too many times, he's going to hurt himself. So I've had to modify his cage. So you want to look at the condition or the energy of your bird. Hair is old, I don't need as big of a cage. My little parrotlets are more active, they need a bigger cage. You want to look at the material, because if you have a finch, maybe you can get away with a beautiful little wooden exquisite cage, but I can't. My birds, especially birds like her, it would be gone in like 2 seconds. She would be like, this is Disneyland for umbrella cockatoos. And then you want to consider the purpose of the cage. Is it an aviary where they're supposed to have the room to fly? Is it a night cage? It's something they're just sleeping in, like her. That it doesn't have to be that big, just like your bed doesn't have to be as big as your house kind of thing. So keep those things in mind. Keep in mind your parrot's condition when you choose the perfect cage, so that your parrot's needs are really met and that the time they spend in there is appropriate and really works for them. Thanks for joining me in this blissful video. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me one of these. You can always do a super thanks. I'm always grateful for those. And please leave a comment. It helps my juice, a comment or a question. If you want to find out how to support my channel, you saw my video stream, but you can also look at the links below, find out about my books, find out about my favorite rescue, that kind of thing. Oh, don't eat my earring. My super cool t-shirts, and then I will catch you in the next feathered video.